History of Halloween. Halloween is among the oldest traditions in the world as it touches on an essential element of the human condition, the relationship between the living and the dead. The observance evolved from ancient rituals marking the transition from summer to winter, thereby associating it with transformation, which is still a central theme of the holiday. Every recorded civilization has created some form of ritual observance focused on what happens to people when they die, where they go, and how the living should best honor those who have passed or respond to the dead who seem unwilling or unable to move on. Countries around the world today celebrate Halloween in one form or another, from Mexico's Day of the Dead to China's Tomb Sweeping Day. The modern-day observance of Halloween in countries such as the United States and Canada, where this tradition is most popular, share in this ancient tradition, even though some aspects of the holiday are relatively recent developments, and can be traced back to the Celtic festival of Samhain. Christian groups through the years have routinely attempted to demonize and denigrate the observance, in part by repeating the erroneous claim that Samhain was the Celtic god of the dead and Halloween his feast. This error comes from the 18th century British engineer Charles Vallancey, who wrote on the Samhain festival with a poor understanding of the culture and language, and has been repeated uncritically since. It was actually the Church itself, however, which preserved the Samhain tradition in the West by Christianizing it in the 9th century, setting the course for a pagan Northern European religious tradition's transformation into a worldwide secular holiday which has become the most popular, and commercially lucrative, of the year, second only to Christmas. Halloween traditions in the West date back thousands of years to the festival of Samhain, pronounced Samhain, Samhain, or Samhain, the Celtic New Year's festival. The name means summer's end, and the festival marked the close of the harvest season and the coming of winter. The Celts believed that the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead were thinnest at this time, and so the dead could return and walk where they had before. Further, those who had died in the past year and who, for one reason or another, had not yet moved on, would do so at this time and could interact with the living. Very little is known of the rituals of ancient Samhain because the Church Christianized it, as with many pagan festivals, and what information is available comes from Irish monks who recorded the pre-Christian history of their people as well as other Christian scribes denigrating pagan rites. It seems, however, that the observance included stocking up supplies for the winter, slaughtering cattle, and disposing of the bones in bone fires, which, in time, came to be known as bonfires. There were gatherings of communities for feasting and drinking while this was going on, but there was also the awareness of the thin time of the year and the possibility of otherworldly visitors showing up at the party. Departed loved ones were expected, and welcomed, and the practice of setting out favorite foods for the dead may have originated as early as 2,000 years ago, though this is unclear, but many other kinds of spirits, some which never had human form, could also appear. Elves, fairies, the wee folk, sprites, and dark energies were just as likely to pay a visit as those one longed to see again one last time. Further, there was a very good chance that the spirit of a person one may have wronged would also make an appearance. In order to deceive the spirits, people darkened their faces with ashes from the bonfires, a practice later known as guising, and this developed into wearing masks. A living person would recognize the spirit of a loved one and could then reveal themselves, but otherwise remains safe from the unwanted attention of darker forces. How long ago these rituals were included in the observance of Samhain is unknown, but some form of them were probably in place by the time Christianity came to Ireland in the 5th century. The hill of Tlachtga, Hill of the Ward, in County Meath was the site of the bonfire lighted on or around October 31, signalling the beginning of Samhain festivities, and it was answered by the much more prominent fire from the Neolithic site of the Hill of Tara across from it. Archaeologists from University College Dublin have dated the excavated earthworks to 200 CE, but note these are only the latest developments at a site first used for ceremonial fires over 2,000 years ago. The hill is named for the druidess Tlachtga, daughter of the powerful druid Mug Ruth who traveled the world learning his craft. She was raped by the 3 sons of Simon Magus, infamous for his confrontation with Saint Peter in the biblical book of Acts 8:9-24, and gave birth to triplets on the hill that bears her name before dying there. The inclusion of a biblical villain in her story, obviously, places the legend in the Christian era and aligns Tlachtga with Saint Peter in so far as they shared a common adversary. Scholars believe that the Tlachtga story, like so many Celtic legends, was Christianized after the coming of Saint Patrick to Ireland, and her rape by the sons of Simon Magus was added to a pre-existing account. The Christianization of pagan symbols, temples, festivals, legends, and religious iconography is well established and applies to the Samhain festival as well as many others. Pope Boniface IV had set 13 May as All Saints' Day, All Hallows' Day, a feast day to celebrate those saints who did not have a day of their own, in the 7th century when he consecrated the great pagan temple of the Pantheon in Rome to Saint Mary and Christian martyrs, but in the 8th century, Pope Gregory III moved the date of the feast to November 1. The motivation for this move is still debated. Some scholars claim it was done intentionally to Christianize Samhain by turning it into All Hallows' Eve, which is most likely true as the move follows an established Christian paradigm of redeeming all things pagan in an effort to ease the conversion process of a given population. Prior to Christianization, May 13 had been the last day of the Roman festival of Lemuria, which ran 9-11, May 13, dedicated to placating the angry or restless dead. The festival developed from a pair of observances held earlier in the year, Parentalia, which honored the spirits of one's ancestors, 13 to 21 February, and Feralia, which honored the spirits of loved ones lost, February 21. On Feralia, the living were obligated to remember and visit the graves of the dead and leave them gifts in the form of grains, salt, bread soaked in wine, and wreaths, accompanied by violet petals. As it was with Parentalia, Feralia, Lemuria, and many others, so it was with Samhain. Previously, the Samhain festival was associated with all those who had gone on before, with the earth, the change of the year, and this transformation was marked by celebration and communal activities. Once the festival was Christianized, All Hallows' Eve became a night of vigil, prayer, and fasting in preparation for the next day when the saints were honored at a far tamer celebration. The old ways had not died out, however, and bonfires were still lighted, only now in honor of Christian heroes, and the turning of the seasons was still observed, only now to the glory of Christ. Many of the rituals which accompanied this new incarnation of the festival are unknown, but by the 16th century, the practice of souling had become integral. The poor of the town or city would go about knocking on doors asking for a soul cake, also known as a soul mass cake, in return for prayers. This practice is thought to have begun in response to the belief in purgatory, where it was thought a soul lingered in torment unless elevated by prayer and, most often, money paid to the church. After the Protestant Reformation, souling continued in Britain. Only now the Protestant young and poor offered to pray for the people of the house and their loved ones instead of those in purgatory, while Catholics continued the older tradition. In the 17th century, Guy Fawkes' Day added a new component to the development of Halloween. On November 5, 1605, a group of dissident Catholics tried to assassinate the Protestant King James I of Britain in an attempt known as the Gunpowder Plot. The attempt failed and one of the group, Guy Fawkes, was caught with the explosives beneath the House of Lords and, although he had co-conspirators, his name attached itself famously to the plot. Guy Fawkes' Day was celebrated by the Protestants of Britain as a triumph over popery, and November 5 became an occasion for anti-Catholic sermons and vandalism of Catholic homes and businesses, even though, officially, the government claimed it was a celebration of Providence sparing the king. On Guy Fawkes' night, bonfires were lit and unpopular figures, most often the Pope, were hanged in effigy while people drank, feasted, and lit off fireworks. Children and the poor would go house to house, often wearing masks, pushing an effigy of Guy Fawkes in a wheelbarrow and begging for money or treats while threatening vandalism if they were refused.